Hey, this is thecanddchannel. I'm Chris. This is MMA for you. I'm going to be doing my predictions for UFC Fight Night 65, Hunt versus Miocic, which happens on May 9th on UFC Fight Pass. Overall, I'm not super high on this card, to be perfectly honest with you. There's some good prospects on here. You know, Jake Matthews, I'm super high on. James Vick, a true dark horse prospect. Jonavin Webb makes his UFC debut. Nguyen makes his UFC debut. It's weird. He's been fighting for a while, though. It's hard to really call him a prospect. I'd actually think Ozkilic, his opponent, who's older, is more of a prospect than Nguyen at this time. Curran, only 24 years old, still a prospect. Main event's good. So, yeah, let's just get started. In the main event, Mark the Super Samoan Hunt fights Stipe Miocic. Mark Hunt has a 10-9 record with 1 draw, 7 wins by KO or TKO, 3 wins by decision. Has his 3 losses by KO or TKO and 6 losses by submission. 41 years old. He's going to be the much shorter fighter as he's 5'10", and Stipe is 6'4". Hunt trains out of ATT and Jackson Winklejohn. He is a strong kickboxer. He has an especially strong left hook. Really good uppercut as well. Real heavy-handed. Knocked out like Roy Nelson. What else has he knocked out? Congo. A lot of guys. His takedown defense is really strong. He has gotten a lot better with his takedown defense. His overall grappling is improving. He actually went into like Fabricio Verdum's guard. Didn't get submitted or anything. This is a guy too that was, he pretty much went to the ground. Anyone with like decent grappling, he went to the ground with Mark Hunt and he'd get like instantly tapped. I mean, that's how bad he was on the ground at one point, and was on like a 5-fight losing streak or something like that. Despite having 3 losses by KO or TKO, he does have a very strong chin. You know, he's a guy that don't see dropped or wobbled too much. I think Bigfoot managed to drop him. Dos Santos dropped him and then knocked him out. Verdum knocked him out the flying knee. And then the other guy, he ran into a punch from Melvin Manhoff. Otherwise, he's shown to be very, pretty durable and have a really good chin, and his cardio is actually really improving. This is a guy who went 5 rounds with Bigfoot Silva, and who was on, Bigfoot was on TRT during that time. Stipe Miocic, 12-2 record, 8 wins by KO or TKO, 1 submission, 1 by strikes. He's 32 years old. He's 6'4", training out of Strong Style Fight Team. At his best, he's a good boxer. He uses combinations well. He's a strong wrestler too. He has a good wrestling pedigree actually. And he's shown in the Junior Dos Santos fight to have a pretty good chin too. With that said, this one's pretty tough for me to call. I think that Mark Hunt is the heavier handed guy. Personally, I just feel that he's a guy who's more likely to get the 1-punch knockout than Stipe. That's how I see it. He's the older fighter, though, 41 years old, whereas Stipe is 32. I can't help but think that at his age and with the wars he's had, he's going to drop off pretty soon. His resurgence has been incredible. This is a guy who's getting insta-tapped, just like multiple fight losing streak. Never even thought he'd be anything more than a fun action fighter. Didn't think he'd be a top 10 UFC fighter. Never thought he'd ever fight for a UFC title. And yeah, it's an interim title, but still a title. You know, a lot of guys don't even get to fight for that. But I can't help but have this feeling that his chin is going, you know, it's slowly but surely going to not be as strong as it used to be. His reflexes aren't going to be, he's not going to be as quick as he used to be. It might even be in this fight that we start seeing it. So with that said, I am going to go with Stipe Miocic. I'm not going to say possible TKO, but I can see Stipe outlasting Mark Hunt as well. So I'll go Stipe decision. I think he can get his boxing in there, use takedowns to keep him honest, and possibly just outlast him. So yeah, Stipe Miocic for the win there. Next fight after that, Brad Tavares fights Robert Whittaker. Tavares has a 13-3 record, 4 wins by KO TKO, 2 wins by sub. 27 years old, training out of Extreme Couture. His stand-up's primarily inside boxing. I mean, he has shown a good jab, especially recently against Nate Marquardt. He was hitting a really good jab on him, but I've always felt that his strength is more the inside boxing. His takedown defense is actually pretty solid, you know. I mean, and his grappling, his overall just offensive grappling is improving as well. I think he's the only guy that went to decision with Yoel Romero, if I'm not mistaken, which is pretty high praise, all things considered. How much of a freak athlete Yoel Romero is. Robert Whittaker, 13-4 record, 6 wins by KO or TKO, 5 wins by sub. 24 years old on a 2-fight win streak. He is an Ultimate Fighter winner. He most recently beat Clint Hester in a really fun fight. Showed a good chin actually, and managed to knock out Hester. He's a good kickboxer and a good counter striker as well. And actually, I think the strength of Whittaker's game actually is in his counter striking. He's pretty heavy-handed too, and he has some pretty good takedown defense. With that said, this one's hard for me to call because Whittaker, I feel, is the more proven finisher. Tavares, you would think that he'd be able to finish, you know, at least drop and or wobble his opponents more, but he just doesn't have it for whatever reason. I mean, I don't really know why too. Heck, it looks like from a technical standpoint, it looks like he hits pretty hard. But it doesn't turn out that way, I suppose. And so that's why I feel that Whittaker, like I said, you know, 11 wins are by finish out of his 13 wins, whereas Tavares, 6 of his 13 wins are by finish. So I'm gonna go with Tavares here. I'm pretty hesitant with the pick. Thinking he'll land that jab. I don't know if he's really the bigger fighter. I think he might be the bigger fighter. I always found Tavares to be something more of a natural middleweight, whereas Whittaker is, he used to fight at welterweight and now moving up to middleweight. Both are still relatively young. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Brad Tavares to win, most likely by decision. Can actually see Tavares maybe in mixing in takedowns, putting a real work. I'd say it'd be a pretty workman-like victory for Tavares. Next fight after that, Sean O'Connell fights Anthony Perosh. O'Connell has a 16-6 record, 8 wins by KO or TKO, 3 wins by sub. Has just 3 losses by KO or TKO and 2 losses by sub. He's 31 years old. He's not as tall as Perosh. He's 6'1", whereas Perosh is 6'3". With O'Connell, you know, average stand-up, average grappler. You know, he's not particularly incompetent in any one area of MMA or anything like that, but he's not like that good or great at any one particular aspect of MMA either. One thing about O'Connell though is he is a pretty resilient guy and a very game opponent. Anthony Perosh, 15-8 record, 5 wins by KO or TKO, 10 wins by sub. He also has 5 losses by KO or TKO. He's 42 years old, 6'3". He's trading wins and losses. He is a finisher. Finished all of his fights. A legit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt with really strong back control. His stand-up, I feel, is below average. It's just mainly used to get into the clinch or just to get the takedown. His offensive takedown ability is not too bad. He has a good clinch. His chin is a bit questionable. I can pretty much call an Anthony Perosh fight at this point. He's gonna stand with his opponent for a little while, get the clinch and whatnot, force that takedown, pass the dominant position, take the bag, get that rear naked choke. That's what he does. He's really good at it. He can do other submissions, but he's really good at that. Like taking the back, fishing for that choke. Did to Guto on no sense in his last fight. And yeah, I actually think that Perosh is going to win this one. I think Perosh has fought and beaten guys as good, if not better, than Sean O'Connell by the method that I more or less just said. So yeah, Perosh by submission. Next fight after that, Jake Matthews fights James Vick. Good fight here. Both are undefeated prospects. James Vick, 7-0 undefeated record with 1 win by TKO, 3 wins by sub. He's 28 years old, tall for the weight class. He's 6'3". Trains out of Team Lloyd Urban. He has a good stand-up, good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's got a good chin, and he's very resilient. Jake Matthews, 8-0 undefeated record, 3 wins by KO or TKO, 4 wins by sub. He's only 20 years old. He's 5'9", so he's going to be the shorter fighter. One thing about Matthews is he's very strong with good offensive takedown ability, strong ground and pound. Strong ground and pound. He is a pressure fighter. He's always in his opponent's face. His stand-up, he can resort to brawling at times though. I'm really high on Jake Matthews. I would even go so far as to say he's a blue chip prospect. However, James Vick is a dark horse prospect. He's not the most technically sound guy, but he finds ways to win. He can dig deep and win. He can make fights real ugly. He's got a really good chin, and it's just super tough. Jake Matthews, like I said, his pressure and his strength are his strengths, really. It's like what I like to call big brother opponents. Beat them up into clinch, take them down, beat them up with ground and pound, and not stop. With that said, it's tough. I think Matthews might have a hard time getting on the inside of Vick, and that's going to be problematic for Matthews. I'm going to hesitantly go with Jake Matthews by decision. If James Vick weren't so tough, I'd actually go Jake Matthews like TKO by ground and pound. I'm banking that Matthews can get inside, get the clinch and get the takedown. Get the fight to the ground and work his ground and pound. At range, it's pretty much all Vick. But yeah, I'm going to go with Jake Matthews by decision. Okay, on to the prelims. Hatsu Hioki fights Daniel Hooker. Daniel Hooker, 11-5 record, 5 wins by KO or TKO, 5 wins by sub. Has his 2 losses by submission, 25 years old. He's pretty tall for a featherweight. He's 6 foot. Hatsu Hioki though is 5'11", so he's pretty tall too. Hooker is a good kickboxer. He has good knees as well. His grappling's not too bad. Shoots some really good ground and pound against Ian Entwistle. He's got a good chin and he's resilient. Hatsu Hioki, 27-8 record with 2 draws, 4 wins by KO or TKO, 12 wins by sub. 31 years old, and like I said, he's 5'11". He's only won 1 of his last 5 fights, though. Does have strong Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills, a really strong guard passing game. Stand-up's actually pretty solid, and has good clinch takedowns. Tough one for me to call, just because Hioki has been a bit underwhelming in the UFC. I managed to rewatch Daniel Hooker's fight with Maximo Blanco. I remember his fight with Entwistle, where Entwistle just dove for a leg lock, couldn't get it, and was just getting ground and pounded for Hooker to get a TKO victory. Watching Hooker's fight with Blanco, though, I wasn't fond of his defense, man. That guy was getting hit clean a lot. He showed a really good chin, and he was always in Maximo Blanco's face. Technical wise, I didn't, he's a good kickboxer, but it wasn't like the super cleanest technique. I think he's more of a gritty. I think his strength is his grit, really. Hioki is more technically sound. If he can especially get the takedown, which I think he can, I can actually see him passing to a dominant position and probably even getting the sub on Hooker. So I'll go with Hioki. Submission, I'll say. Maybe decision. Or more. I'm actually more likely to say decision, but I'll go Hioki submission. By submission. Nice fight with that. Noke fights Jonavin Webb. Noke, 20-7 record with 1 draw, 7 wins by KO TKO, 8 wins by sub. That's his 2 losses by submission. He's 35 years old. He's only won 1 of his last 4 fights, training out of Team Jackson Winklejohn. He has some good stand-up, pretty heavy, relatively heavy-handed too. His Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills are good. Solid grappler, but his takedown defense is really weak. I mean, just does not have good takedown defense. Jonavin Webb, 8-0 record with 1 no contest, 2 wins by KO TKO, 4 wins by sub. 25 years old. It'll be his first fight in the UFC. First and foremost, he's a wrestler / grappler. His striking, I saw 1 video of his. There isn't a lot of video of him, but I saw 1 of them. Kind of a single strike outside, from the outside type of a striker. But he's pretty relentless about getting those takedowns. And he has I believe he has a wrestling pedigree too, if I'm not mistaken. With that said, I am going to go Jonavin Webb. I just think that he has the superior wrestling here. I think he can get the takedowns on Noke and maybe just grind out that victory. So Jonavin Webb by decision. Next fight after that, Sam Alvey fights Daniel Kelly. Kelly has a 9-0 undefeated record. 2 wins by KO TKO, 5 wins by sub, 37 years old. Not as tall as Sam Alvey. Sam Alvey's 6'2", whereas Daniel Kelly's 6'0". Kelly is a judo Olympian with good submission grappling. His stand-up is weak. Watch his last fight against Patrick Walsh. He only threw it seemed like he only knew how to throw like two strikes, or what was it, like a jab cross or something like that. I mean, it was just really bad. That was a terrible fight. Sam Alvey, 25-6 record with 1 no contest, 16 wins by KO TKO, 2 wins by sub. 28 years old, and like I said, he's 6'2" on a 2-fight win streak. Most recently, knocking out Cesar Ferreira. He trains out of Team Quest. Has some good stand-up and a particularly sneaky left hook. Pretty heavy-handed with that strike. He's a decent grappler as well, but he is a slow starter. Kelly might be able to use his judo and get the clinch and maybe get the takedowns. Sam Alvey's fought a guy with good judo already. When he was on like the top, when he was still really good, and Carl Amasu, Alvey did actually get taken down by him and mounted, but managed to get back to his feet and whatnot. So Alvey, he's hard to hold down. And I think he's the better striker here. And especially if he can get that left hook on Kelly. Kelly's tough, though. That's the thing. He definitely has some toughness to him. Nonetheless, Sam Alvey, KO or TKO victory, possibly by his left hook. I go Sam Alvey, TKO for the victory here. Next fight after that, Lisa Ellis fights Beck Rowdy Rawlings. Rawlings, 5-4 record, 1 win by TKO, 3 wins by sub. 26 years old on a 2-fight losing streak. She's only won 1 of her last 4 fights. She has some good stand-up. She's a decent grappler. One thing about her, she is pretty resilient. She's always in the fight. You can see that in the color as far as the fight. You know, it's like she was always in the fight despite getting like out wrestled and out grappled. Lisa Ellis, 15-9 record, 11 wins by sub, 4 wins by decision. She also has 4 losses by submission. 32 years old. She's only won 1 of her last 5 fights. She's taken the fight on short notice. She actually has some good wrestling. It's actually not too bad. Her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is not too bad either, but she's not positionally aware. She loses positions. If she's on top, she gets reversed a good amount of times. She loses positions in grappling a lot. Her stand-up is relatively weak. I think Ellis is probably the better wrestler than Rawlings, but I'm going to go with Rawlings to win this one. I think she has the better stand-up. She's more, I think, the tougher fighter, you know? And like I said, with Ellis, she tends to lose positions on the ground, which is... and never really fixed that too, you know? Method of victory for Rawlings. I can see a possible ground and pound TKO victory. I'll go back Rawlings decision here. Next fight after that, Dylan Andrews fights Brad Scott. Brad Scott, 9-3 record, 5 wins by KO TKO, 4 wins by sub. 25 years old. He is a finisher. He last fought in March of 2014. He has some good stand-up, decent grappler as well. Dylan Andrews, 17-6 record with 1 no contest, 12 wins by KO TKO, 3 wins by sub. Has 3 losses by KO TKO and 3 losses by sub. At 35 years old on a 2-fight losing streak, most recently losing to Sam Alvey. Things I like, he is resilient. You know, he's also a pretty resilient guy. I use that word a lot here, and it's actually a pretty common thread here. I also noticed that with a lot of Australian fighters too. They're just very resilient. You know, what they might lack in technique, they'll make up for in resilience and toughness and grit. So I'm using that word a lot here because I think it's actually pretty apt with a lot of these fighters. I like his, you know, with Andrews, his stand-up and grappling are good. He also has some pretty good ground and pound as well. So it's tough for me to call. Both these guys are like lower level fighters. I can't say I'm particularly impressed with either. Brad Scott, man, last time he fought was what, Claudio Silva? Claudio Silva just played his usual game on Brad Scott. I'll go with Dylan Andrews by TKO here. Not super. I find Andrews to be relatively tough. I mean, knocked himself out in his last fight though. A guy that's at least always in the fight. Dylan Andrews, TKO. Next fight after that, Alex Astro Girl Chambers fights Kailin Curran. Chambers has a 4-2 record, 2 wins by KO TKO, 1 win by sub. She also has 2 losses by submission. 36 years old. She's small for 115. She usually fought at 10. She's fought at like 105. Didn't seem undersized there, or like big, particularly even big for atom weight either, you know. She has some good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills. Actually, I remember when she beat Jody Escobar, took her back, and got to choke. Her stand-up's average, you know. Kailin Curran 3-1 record. All 3 of her wins are by decision. 24 years old, training out of Rain. Best thing I can say about Curran is she is a good wrestler. I'd say her stand-up is below average to average. You know, it's nothing great. I think Chambers might actually have the better stand-up. Maybe equal stand-up. It's tough to say. I'm going to go with Kailin Curran for the win here. I think she can use her wrestling to take the fight to the ground and get enough control and whatnot to get the decision victory. Next fight, I thought Vick Grujic fights Brendan O'Reilly. O'Reilly has a 5-1 record with 1 no contest, 1 win by TKO, 2 wins by sub, 27 years old. You know, there's only two like fights of his that has like recent footage. One is his one fight against Cajun Johnson in The Ultimate Fighter, Nations, and then his other fight against Lepeng Zhang, where he lost. The only thing I can say about Brendan O'Reilly, he has good offensive takedown ability. Stand up, average at best. Vick Grujic, 6-4 record, 2 wins by KO TKO, 2 wins by sub, 28 years old. He's only won 2 of his last 6 fights, but he does train out a good camp out of Alliance. Both these guys, just lower level fighters. I mean, I'm gonna go with Grujic here. By decision. I'm not gonna lie here. Kind of a coin flip here, because I'm just relatively unimpressed with both of these guys. There's nothing about these guys that I find to be quote-unquote UFC level. You know, they're just kind of there, you know. I think Grujic, I don't even know if he's the better of the two, you know. That's the thing. He does train at the better camp though out of Alliance, so that's enough for me. Vick Grujic by decision. Yeah. And finally, Ben Nguyen fights Alptekin Ozkilic. Nguyen has a 13-5 record, 8 wins by KO TKO, 3 wins by sub. He also has 4 losses by KO TKO. 26 years old on a 7-fight win streak. Training out of Tiger Muay Thai with the likes of Brian Ebersol and Zubaira Tukhugov. That will be his first fight in the UFC. So I've watched some fights of his. His stand-up's good. I found his grappling to be decent. You know, like he has a ground game. I did see him in some pretty bad positions in some of his fight style. So, you know, I wouldn't say it's his strength. Alp Ozkilic, 9-3 record, 2 wins by KO TKO, 1 win by sub, 29 years old. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. But the guy he fought last was John Lineker, and a really fun fight where Ozkilic really looked good in defeat. He actually showed some improved stand-up. He was actually striking with Lineker. Managed to go to the 3rd round and just, I mean, he just had nothing left, you know, in the tank, and got the loss by TKO. But Ozkilic's wrestling is really good though. With that said, I'll go with Alp Ozkilic to win by decision. I think he can utilize his wrestling. His stand-up's good, you know, improving. I think he can hang with Ben on the feet, and I think he can take him down consistently as well. So I'll go with Alp Ozkilic for the win there, by decision. Okay, to recap the main card, I have Stipe Miocic beating Mark Hunt, Brad Tavares beating Robert Whittaker, Anthony Perosh over Sean O'Connell, Jake Matthews over James Vick. On the prelims, I have Hatsu Hioki over Daniel Hooker, Jonavin Webb beating Kyle Noke, Sam Alvey over Daniel Kelly, Beck Rawlings over Lisa Ellis, Dylan Andrews beating Brad Scott, Kailin Curran over Alex Chambers, Vick Grujic over Brendan O'Reilly, and Alptekin Ozkilic over Nguyen. So that's it for my predictions for UFC Fight Night 65, Hunt versus Miocic. If you have any comments, just leave them below. And that's it for MMA for you. Thank you guys very much.